The sun had barely risen when James Harris, an 82-year-old man with a quiet strength etched into every line of his face, pulled up to the edge of town on his 1970 Harley-Davidson Shovelhead. The deep rumble of the engine echoed between storefronts, announcing his presence long before anyone could see him. He was just doing what he always did, heading into town for supplies after a morning of work on his small farm. But today would be different. As he stopped at the red light near the gas station, two police officers stepped out of their patrol car. Officer Ava Johnson approached with a smirk, her mirrored sunglasses hiding any sign of respect or curiosity. Her voice was sharp, laced with mockery as she ordered him to shut off the junk. James didn't flinch. His hands remained steady on the handlebars, his eyes fixed forward, calm and unshaken. What neither officer knew was that within minutes, this routine stop would spiral into something far beyond their control. Something none of them were prepared for. James handed over his license and registration without hesitation, his documents neatly kept in a worn leather wallet. Officer Johnson flipped through them with suspicion, clearly not expecting someone so old to still be riding. Officer David Lopez joined her, inspecting the motorcycle with a grin, making jokes about its age. They ordered him to step off the bike and began a search, unnecessary but carried out anyway. A small crowd gathered around, murmurs spreading through the street. When asked where he lived, James simply said, "On a farm nearby, alone." The officers exchanged glances, silently labeling him as another confused old man. Johnson raised her voice, questioning whether it was safe for him to ride at all. James stayed silent, letting their assumptions hang in the air. Lopez whispered to Johnson that he might even be deaf, but James wasn't deaf. He'd heard much worse in places far more dangerous than this quiet town square. James had been waking up at 5 a.m. every day for the last 40 years. Discipline was part of who he was, carved into him by decades of military service. He served in Vietnam, then later in the Gulf War and Afghanistan, training hundreds of young soldiers. His medals included 2 Bronze Stars, 2 Purple Hearts, and a Distinguished Service Cross, honors few ever earn. But no one saw that when they looked at him now. All they saw was an elderly man on an old motorcycle. Across the street, Marcus, a Gulf War veteran who ran the gas station, recognized James immediately. He watched the scene unfold with growing anger and picked up the phone. He called Fort Carson, explaining the situation. The operator paused, then changed tone completely. "Hold on, we're sending a unit right now." Unbeknownst to James, help was already on the way. The call reached Captain George Farrell, a seasoned officer with over 2 decades of service. He didn't hesitate. Within minutes, 12 Humvees roared down the road, kicking up dust as they arrived in formation. 50 soldiers stepped out, creating a semicircle around the scene. Farrell himself walked straight toward James, snapping a salute. "Colonel Harris!" The word sent shockwaves through the crowd. Johnson and Lopez exchanged panicked glances. Farrell turned sharply to the officers, his voice cutting like steel. Who dared to stop Colonel Harris? He informed them of James's legendary status, a living legend in the U.S. Armed Forces, a mentor to countless officers, a decorated war hero. The mood shifted instantly. Phones were still recording, but now with awe instead of mockery. The crowd realized they had witnessed something extraordinary and deeply humbling. Officer Johnson stepped forward, visibly shaken. "Sir, Colonel Harris, I'm sorry, I didn't know." James met her gaze with the same patience he once used to train young recruits. "Never judge someone by their appearance," he said calmly. "You have no idea what battles they fought, what scars they carry." His words weren't angry. They were wise, grounded in decades of experience. Captain Farrell offered assistance, but James declined. He returned to his Harley, started the engine, and rode away, flanked by a corridor of honor formed by the 50 soldiers standing at attention. That night, Sheriff Smith received a call from the base. Though no charges were filed, the message was clear. Veterans deserve dignity and respect. The local precinct agreed to implement a new training program in partnership with the military. A week later, the entire department gathered for a mandatory meeting. Ava Johnson stood up, nervous but resolute. She admitted her mistake, sharing what she learned. That judgment comes too easily, but understanding takes effort. Days later, she visited James on his farm. He was under the tractor again, fixing the hydraulic system. She sat across from him in the kitchen, sipping coffee as they talked. He asked why she became a cop. She answered honestly. He asked how many accidents she'd seen caused by older drivers. She admitted very few. Then he asked the question that cut deepest. Then why did you assume I was the problem? She couldn't answer. Outside, she looked at his motorcycle, rusty, loud, old, and realized he'd been riding longer than she'd been alive. It still worked. So did Colonel Harris. So do all of us, in our own ways. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. This is more than just a tale. It's a reminder of the sacrifices made by those who came before us and the importance of never judging someone by appearances. Because sometimes the person you least expect is the one who has given the most.